So there's still people coming in, so we'll probably just start by telling some bad jokes or something. Do you know any?
No, I think you're the expert on the bad jokes. Yeah. You make much more than me.
Bad jokes mostly, right?
Yeah.
So welcome everybody. It's an honor, right?
Yeah.
To do the closing keynote today here in Thessaloniki. I'm really happy to be able to return to Thessaloniki. I really like the town, but it's basically, we're going to do a nice talk. It's not, so I imagine you're all very tired, right, after this. Are you all tired? No, we need beer, right? So
now we have to do another talk, because this one was for when people were tired.
Yeah, so we'll promise not to take more than 2 hours for this talk. Less probably, right?
Yeah.
So let's probably get started. There's still people coming in, but well, you missed the start of it, right? So this is Kim and this is me, and we're going to do this talk, and it's called Flow, and it's a really interesting talk. We'll show you. We're going to do a little bit of history first, right? Every talk you should start with some history, especially when you're in Greece, because the history is so long here. But let's start with the history of software development methodologies, right? Ooh. That's kind of dark. Can you guys still see us? I probably should stand if I'm too small for this, right? So anyway, let's start with a small history of software development methodologies, right? If you are old, like me, which I can't see anybody anymore, but I'm supposed I'm one of the oldest people in the room. Is anybody here born in the 80s? Yeah, okay, yeah, you are, right? So, yep, young people. Everybody born in the 70s? Oh, okay. Anybody born in the 60s?
Yeah, two. There was another one.
Where? Cool.
Yes.
Good. So, if you're born in the 60s like me, you have seen the rise and fall of waterfall. Now, waterfall is an interesting thing because waterfall originated from a white paper that was written by a guy called Winston Royce. And it was called Managing the Development of Large Software Systems. This white paper was written in 1970, right? That is way before any of us could code. It was way before I could code. That would take another 10 years, but anyway, so it's an old white paper. There is this image in this particular white paper that you all know, or at least you all should know, or recognize it at least, and that's this picture. You've seen this one, right? If you are in a project where this is still the model that people use, quit your job, right? We don't do this anymore these days, but this is a one-pass model where you start with doing requirements, more requirements, you do some analysis. When that's done, you do the design. When that's done, you build the software. When that is done, you test the software, and then you put it into production for the next 40 years, right? This is an ideal that was never true, actually. The stupid thing is, this white paper was written in 1970, and after publishing the white paper, a lot of people read it. Well, not so many people as these days, because the internet didn't exist, right? That took another 20 years. But people read it and start creating their own software development methodologies based on this particular picture. It had a one-pass model with all the drawbacks in it. Now, the interesting part about this fabulous white paper, you should actually all read it, is there is a next picture in it. I'll show you the next picture. The next picture says, well, maybe, well, I'll read for you what it says, right? It says, hopefully the iterative interaction between the various phases is confined to successive steps. Winston Royce in 1970 said, you should always be able to go back to a previous stage. And if you're lucky, you only have to go back one stage. So if you find new ideas, changing requirements, stuff that doesn't work, you should be able to go back from writing the code into do the analysis, do the requirements, whatever, and then go back and forth and back and forth. Well, that is actually a very iterative approach, right? That's basically what it says, iterative. They didn't realize that in the 70s, so we spent billions of whatever currency you have on wrong projects. Right? And it goes even further, because further down the white paper he says, note that it is simply the entire process done in miniature to a time scale that is relatively small in respect to the overall effort. He's actually saying, take a part of what you want to build, just go through the cycle multiple times, and then do the next part. This is, well, what we know these days as Agile, right? I think it is, actually. So let's discuss Agile, because we spent way too much money on doing waterfall projects that all failed. There's lots of research about it. Most of them failed, so we should not do that anymore these days, right? So you all went and you jumped on the Agile train. Now, what happened on the Agile train? Well, I started defending Agile in like 2000, 2001 maybe, and I wrote the first Agile approach in 1998, right? Well, that's a long time ago too, right? And a lot of people started thinking about Agile that it's this, right? Yeah, well, we do Agile programming. Now, that means that we don't write any documentation anymore. We don't plan anything anymore. We just write code, and we'll complain afterwards. Good idea, right? Well, I liked it for a long bit, and then all of the Agile frameworks became more popular, especially this one. This is called Scrum. This is my own handwriting, but it's still Scrum. It's recognizable as Scrum. And a lot of people went on to think that, well, Agile sort of is equivalent to Scrum, and Scrum is equivalent to Agile, right? So about, what was it, 81% of all people doing Agile doing Scrum?
Yeah, State of the DevOps, State of the Agile report says that of all companies doing Agile, 81% applies Scrum.
Oh, God.
So who doesn't do Scrum but is Agile?
The world is doomed, basically, right? So,
ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Wow,
okay,
yeah. Wow.
That proves the point, right?
So, and what happened then in the meantime is that because, well, sort of the Agile industrial complex took over, because a lot of people identified Agile as a way to make lots of money, which is a good point, basically. But and then some of the Agile signees, like Dave says, well, look, I'm actually, where does he say that? Well, here, basically. He said, the word Agile has been subverted to the point where it's effectively meaningless, and what passes on for an Agile community seems to be largely an arena for consultants and vendors to hook services and products. That's where we are now, right? It's 2023, and this is where we are. Lots of people figured out how to make money out of Agile. And as a result, Agile doesn't mean anything anymore these days, unfortunately, because I really like Agile as what it should be. Because if you go into Agile conferences, please don't, then you see stuff like this, right? Make sure you don't miss the Agile elephant versus the waterfall elephant in the lobby. What is that? You're all tired, you have no idea what it is. I don't know either, right? So, or during this session, we're going to discuss the happiness index of projects. What? What are we doing, right? So, or add ready for celebration before the done column on your Kanban board. Do you have that? Well, then you're not Agile, right? So, and it even gets worse. Like even the authors of Scrum doing stuff like this, right? This is a tweet, or I think it was on LinkedIn. I think probably a tweet. I don't know. Jeff Sutherland, one of the authors of Scrum, he says, "New chapter: explore the Zen-inspired transformative power of Scrum." Have you encountered that transformative Zen-like power when doing Scrum? Right. I rest my case, right? And then our good friend Alan, he sort of summarizes all of it, as he usually does. And Alan says, more and more, I'm coming to see the term Agile as both unnecessary and self-defeating. Agile has come to mean, do parts of Scrum badly and use Jira. And we said, well, I think it's time we sort of drop it. And then the question is, what do you do now? What if you cannot do waterfall? You cannot do Scrum or Agile or whatever you want to do? What do you do next? Well, then you listen to us. Who's us? Well, this is me. My name is Sander. I'm basically an independent dad. I have some kids. Last time I was here, I actually brought one of my sons because he's very much into Greek mythology. I speak a bit, I write a bit, I travel a bit, together with Kim usually. And I'm a CTO for an e-commerce company in the Netherlands. And yesterday we actually won the Website of the Year award for Best Deal Site, I think. Cool, right? For the 14th year in a row, actually, I figured. I wasn't there because I was here, basically. So, anyway, that's me. And what I am mostly is, I'm a lifelong programmer. I've been writing code since 1978. And official to make money, thank you. Officially to make money since 1987, actually. So that's a very long time. And I still write code every day, except for today. So.
Then it's my turn.
Yes.
If my clicker works. It did previously.
It did so. Yeah, there you are.
Technology, brilliant. So I'm Kim. I have a boyfriend, that's him. I have 2 kids. He has 3, last time we counted. No grandchildren yet. we hope. And I love board games. I came from management in IT, and at a certain point I thought, I really don't believe in the concept of management in an industry that is this complex. So I searched for a company to work. Well, being a manager, that's quite hard because then your resume is kind of wasted. Luckily, I found a company that I tricked into hiring me. They have no managers. They think that all the mandates should be with the engineers. And I love working there. I think I'm good at gaining an overview. And yeah, you can still call that management, but it isn't because I have no say or mandate over all the people. So, being both divorced, having kids, we thought, well, we're going to invent a new methodology. Why? Well, because it makes a lot of money. So if you're divorced, if you have kids of 17 and 19, well, you know, they're all studying, you need a lot of money. And having a methodology really makes sure that you get a lot of money. So we want one of our own, of course. So that's why. And of course, if you think about a methodology, you could make it that way that it makes your software really efficient. But then you don't make as much money as when you make your methodology in a way that it makes your software last as long as possible. And because our objective is to make money, we thought, well, what if we match and search to combine all of the worst practices that are out there? So we did, and that was a lot of fun because there's lots of hopeless examples.
Yeah, so we can make project last as long as possible, right?
So we can pay the study of our kids, basically.
Exactly.
So that's what we're going to do. And the first thing we need to do is naming our methodology, and that's really hard. So we were thinking about some Japanese words, such as Kaizen, Kanban, Obeya, Origami. Maybe something with crusty, like holacracy, sociocracy, and idiocracy. And what about something with continuous D, like continuous discovery, disappointment, or disagreement? All good candidates.
I like it.
Something with hashtag no, of course, or less yes. So no ops, no estimates, no projects, maybe no SQL, no testing, no code. I've seen them all pass by here. Serverless, pointless. Something as a service.
PowerPointless.
PowerPointless, oh yeah. Software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform, testing as a service, anything as a service, or maybe methodology as a service. And in the end, we came with Flow because it fits on laptop stickers, and that was our main requirement. So, for instance, when you start, you get this. When you are certified, you can go with the flow. If you do front end, you get a hipster version. If you are a flow master, you can feel the flow, or even surrender to the flow, then you're a flow owner. And all because we really want this sticker on our laptop, of course.
Yeah, that's basically. So the next question is, what do we put in it, right? Well, we put in it the stuff that makes our project last longer. So everything that creates waste, we'll just dump it in there, put a ribbon around it, and that's basically it, right? So where do we start? Well, with sprints, of course. Are you in sprints? You're not in sprints, or you don't dare to admit, right? That's probably the point. I thought, okay, if you're in sprints, you have to realize that every sprint you do is sort of like a mini project. Right? It's like you agree to do some work, which you can estimate yourself, hopefully, in whatever stupid sizing thing there is, like t-shirt sizing or whatever you can come from, Fibonacci series and whatever you can think of, right? And you estimate the work, and you try to get that work done in a certain period of time. That is called a project, right? So every sprint basically is a project. Now, the thing with projects is they can go wrong in all sorts of ways, right? Say you agreed on doing a bunch of work, you estimated it. What if you finish early? What do? Well, officially, in a sprint, you cannot enlarge the amount of work that goes into a sprint. So you basically have to sit on your hands for about a week or two, right? I've seen this happening, actually. So, no, we cannot do more work. That's not allowed in Scrum, right? Or, what if you do all this work and you think it's okay, and they don't find time to accept the work you do or test the work you do until the end of the sprint, right? That you are by the end of the sprint, you didn't finish anything actually basically because it wasn't approved And let's say they approve half of it. What happens to the other half, right? That is silly. Or what if you estimated all this work and you have this ideal line and your progress is too slow? It's just more complicated than you thought it would be. That sort of happens all the time, basically. Or what if you have like scope creep? You continuously do add work to the sprint, which is not allowed in Scrum officially. So it's really, really hard to make these mini projects actually work. I'll give you one example. This comes from a project in Brussels that I visited in 2013, right? And this was the burn down chart of their first sprint. So they estimated all the work. It was a Java project, by the way. And they estimated all the work, and like, yeah, we're good. And then they tried to follow this ideal line. It went up and down and up and down and up. And by the end of the sprint, they had some work left. And they were like, that's not good. And then the next sprint came along. Again, another month. And in the other month, what happened is, by the end of the month, they had some more work left, which, of course, added to the work that they didn't finish on the previous one. And then after like 3 sprints, the project manager, yes, the project manager, he said, you guys are stupid. You don't know how to estimate. And as developers, you, of course, need to say, no, we don't. Sorry, our bad. Nothing you can do about it except stop estimating. Anyway, so the project manager said, we're too late. We'll never make the deadline. We'll hire people from India, in this case, actually. 300 of them. This is a true story, by the way. So they hired 300 people from India. They didn't know anything about the project. So what happened is they got later and later and later and later. After the 5th sprint, the project manager was fired, as you should, of course, right? And then the 6th sprint came up. This project never made it to the deadline, right? And that is good, because if you can hire 300 people more as a consultancy, you make tons of money, right? So sprints so we can put sprints in there, right? We should.
Definitely.
Yep.
So next thing I want to talk about is gamification. Because we really need it. It will also allow people from outside the industry to step in.
Yep.
So there's this nasty little thing in the Agile Manifesto, and it says that we truly believe that the best ideas come from autonomous teams. And well, that's quite hard actually, because, well, we really do believe in autonomy, but we really don't think they get to hire people, because engineers have little experience with that. Don't get to fire people, because there might be a hurtful process. Don't get to do appraisals. Who are you to judge if your fellow coder is doing a good job? You don't really get to decide what to work on, so you don't own the product. And of course, you don't get to spend money.
Nope.
So yeah, our teams will be autonomous. However, we will decide what's on the backlog. We will decide who is on what team. We will decide what tools you're using, when you have meetings. And also, you do get to decorate your working space.
Yeah.
So this will be true autonomy in flow. Because who doesn't want to work in a working space that looks like this? This is Zappos, by the way. This is a true example.
Yep.
Because there you can decorate your working space to make it look like home. Whose home looks like this? Get help.
Oh, wait until your kids grow up, right? It will look like this, actually, eventually.
Oh, that's true. Your home looks like this.
Yeah.
No. With the daddy sticker.
Oh, yeah.
No, they don't do that anymore. So this is me during a job interview. It was in a ball pit for, at that moment, a senior management position.
Yeah.
And the question you can ask yourself is this true autonomy that you're allowed to play when you want?
Well, it depends on what you're doing, right? If you work in a toy factory, that might be the case, right? But not in software development, I suppose. So let's talk a little bit about teams, right? And roles and resources, right? So we'll use the word resource, because I had this talk this morning when somebody said, yeah, we don't have enough resources on that day. What do you mean? You don't have chairs? What? So, but he meant people, I guess, right? So, so let's talk about teams. So in Scrum, let's beat on Scrum a little bit more. They continuously change their mind about how big is an ideal team. I think the original version of Scrum had 7 plus or minus 2, right? You have 7 plus or minus 2 people. The reason for that is that they found the number 7 in some paper about something totally different, which I forgot what it was. I can find it again. So they said, oh yeah, let's pick 7, magic number, right? So we'll pick 7 and 2, or minus 2. That's ideal. Why? Well, nobody knows, right? And everybody sort of like follows that until they changed it about a decade ago and said, no, that was wrong. It's now 6 plus or minus 3. That'll teach them. And these days, there's a new version of the Scrum guide, and it says, well, everything less than 10, right? Because basically they want to be inclusive because, well, the more teams get into Scrum, the more people certify, the more money they make, basically, right? So that's the whole idea. Except that some of these agile approaches, or sort of agile approaches, have way more rules. I'll give you one example, it's this. So this is called disciplined agile. It's kind of, I don't really like that phrase actually, but they have all these rules. And these are just the rules outside of the team, right? So you can, if you're a consultancy, you can like sell like 14 people, 50 people, how many people anyway, onto one team, and you can just tag them all. Yeah, well, we need a governor. What is that? A support manager. That's when they don't, well, anyway. The community of practice lead. I have no idea what these people do all day, but yeah. You could get worse, right? You could be in this. This is written by some consultancy. I'm not going to name it. And I'm never sure whether this is a joke, on April 1st joke or something, or whether this is real, right? If it's real, it's really, really sad, actually. So I think we should do all of this stuff, right? Or let's put it in this way. SAFe, right? SAFe is actually by now the most popular agile framework. That is extremely sad, right? It's terrible. Has anybody in a SAFe project? I feel sorry for you. I'm really sorry. So let's do one thing about SAFe. Let's put up the picture and ask yourself the question, where is the customer? Here it comes, right? So, where's the customer? It's there. There? It's there, right? It's that poor person totally on the left, on the right side of the diagram being hit by this agile release train. I'm not sure what it does, but it's a train. Being hit by a train is not much fun. And you can only keep this joke in for like a year because then they will have a new version, right? Which is version 6, I think. And now the customer's not even there anymore. Yes, it's sort of like about the customer because it have customer centricity. That means don't talk to the customer, we'll reason about it, but we don't talk directly to them anymore, right? That's basically it. So it gets bigger and bigger. I think they now even include something called the big picture. No idea what it is, but it's in there, so it's good, right? We need to have that. And yeah, where's the customer now, right? It's just gone. And SAFe is like, well, they try to push everything in there, right? There's now even AI trademark in there. What it does, nobody knows. And team topology, so one of the authors of team topologies, fabulous book, by the way, is it's also included there. Yes, you need to do team topologies. And then Matthew Skelton says, well, SAFe includes team topologies in the way that you might push raw blueberries into a plain muffin and call it a blueberry muffin. That's sort of how it fits, right? So, and then we need to talk about resources, right? Because teams is just this. So, and the thing with resources is, well, most managers like the phrase resources, right? We sort of like prefer people, but that's like soft me, right? It's like resources. How many resources do you need? I don't know. And so, yeah, well, we'll just be resources. And then, of course, we have these agile coaches. And is anybody of you an agile coach? Or a Scrum Master? Oh, good. So what do you do all day? So, what? Oh, good for you. How much money does that cost? So yeah, I'm always wondering what these people do, right? So what they do is they do agile code camps and agile retreats, agile leadership weekends, and they go into do stuff like this, right? They go to the Obeya Knowledge Network. No idea what it is, but it's Japanese, so it must be good. And they discuss all sorts of topics from the upcoming book on Obeya, right? Cool. And then they go to events like Play Live, and they do gamification. That's what they do, because, yeah, we need to play games, not write code, right? So they have like, they're going to zoom more into agile metrics. There's no such thing, by the way. And the marriage between Scrum and Kanban, which is sort of like a bad marriage, right? That's how you get divorced, basically. Yeah, and they do liberating structures. Yes, all sorts of exercise techniques to make people look silly on their job while they actually would like to write code. So we have like the 15% solutions. Well, we can all do that. Design storyboards, eco-cycle, open space, drawing together. Let's bring my crayons to work day, is it right? And yeah, that's like, and the only thing, as a developer, the only thing I'm like, where is the code? I was not going to say not nice words today, right? I don't know, where's my code gone?
So next thing we really have to discuss is DevOps.
Oh, yeah.
So we definitely want to keep DevOps. Why? Because you can have lengthy discussions about the order in which the acronym is formed. So there's this person who says,
Endless.
well, we should actually call it Ops Dev, because Ops is more important than Dev, basically. Because it's about running your application in production. And this guy even takes it a step further, SecDev, SecOps, because he says, well, security is really important at the start, it's also important while you're building, and it's also important in production, so it should be everywhere. But then we're like, where's the analysts, or where are the testers, or the project managers? This is not really an inclusive acronym. And then we looked back into the history, and the name was actually founded by Patrick Dubois. And he says, well, he just picked it because it really sounded nice together. And there was never really a grand plan for a word. So why did he even think about this word? Well, there was this moment in time where software engineers were becoming more and more agile, and where the system administrators, as they were called in that day, they were kind of lacking behind, because they were still asking you to specify 1 year ahead how much storage and CPU do you need. And the engineers were like, yeah, we don't know. We don't know where we're going to build in a month. You figure it out. So he really wanted to kind of keep up the pace of change that software engineering had now adopted. That was his grand plan. The word itself have a particular order or whatever, but yeah, we do like the lengthy discussions, of course. So we're going to keep that. And the flow collaboration mindset will be even more inclusive. So we want community,
everybody,
not just business, or not just, because that's too narrow. We want development, because we still want to write code. We want operations, because it still needs to be running in production. But we also want some more thinking with analysts, and we want security at the end. That's where we settle on it, basically. So that's com DevOps anal sex. And then we got some complaints from backend engineers, because they didn't want to be in the team anymore. So we changed it into just resources, because it's also a bit shorter, res.
Still terrible, right? So, and then of course we need meetings, right? Because, well, the good thing about meetings is, if you ever want to waste time, organize meetings, right? Do you like meetings? You all like being in meetings, right? Yeah, you do. I know you do, because you're certified,
so this
right?
is the problem. Only the Scrum Masters like meetings.
That's really cool. I do need to take your picture later on, right? So let's start with this one. Do you like stand-ups? Do you do stand-ups? I suppose you do, right? You all do, right? So, yep. Do you like them? Yes, exactly, right? Yeah. That's when they last too long, right? So I had that actually. But so can you imagine? So I've been doing this agile stuff for over 20 years, right? So I've been in stand-up meetings almost every day for about 20 years. I think that's quite, I should get a certificate for that, right? Certified stand-up meter or whatever, right? So something like that. So the thing is with stand-ups, you can do them for a while. They're quite good, and you can exchange information about what you're doing, what other people on your team are doing. And the thing is, with my team, I work with them the whole day, basically, right? So I know exactly where we are and where they are and what we're doing or where we're going, et cetera, et cetera. We don't actually need this stuff anymore. We still do it, by the way, but it's like boring, right? You can see everybody, especially when they're remote. You can see their eyes go in different ways than to the screen, because they're just typing ahead, right? I do that too, by the way. So don't tell that to my team, by the way, but they know that actually. So yeah, they're okay-ish, but they're also like boring. But they do take a serious piece out of your day, so that's good, right? So the next thing is retrospectives. Do you like I know you'd like them, but yeah. Does anybody else like them? Well. So I once was in a project. Oh, one other person. That's cool, right? I once was in a project, and we were in sprint 76. So it was a really long project. It never ended, by the way. And then we had these retrospectives every time, and they were the same every time. Like, yeah, Jan Bart was one of the guys on the team. Jan Bart, you should really pay more attention to blah, 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 blah. And then Jan Bart says, yeah, I'll do that, right? And then, yes, right away, right? And the next retrospective after 3 weeks, and we were in the session, so Jan Bart, how did it go? And he said, Okay, well, Jan Bart, you need to really pay attention to this in the next sprint. And Jan Bart said, yes. And then we went, oh, well, you can imagine the repetition in it, right? So it repeats all the time. So I started renaming them to retrospectives, which is actually a much better word, because basically we don't do anything in these retrospectives, right? We just promise to be better, but we never do, right? Yeah, it's okay for the first 3 to 4 sprints, but after that it's like repeating it all the time, right? So wasting time every time. And then you need to get people in flow, like, and this poor Java developer actually, Martijn. And Martijn sits at his screen and he's praying for it to work. Well, that's because he works in light mode, right? You don't do that. So, and yeah, you just don't do that, right? So the problem with getting in flow, really being in flow, it's what Venkat illustrated this morning too, is that it actually takes time to get into flow. Research being done says, well, it takes programmers about 10 to 15 minutes to actually get in flow. Right? From the moment you start zoning out or zoning in, whatever you call it, up to the time that you can think, and yes, this is going to be it. And you start typing, you start working, you think more, and la. That takes about 10 minutes. Or even worse, I read research recently that it says it takes even 23 minutes. So the best thing you can do as a consultant is break in. Right? That's what you do as a consultant. So what you do is you organize random meetings throughout the week. At timing that is not predefined, but just when you want to say, yes, we do it now. We really need to get together because this UI really needs some work. Like marketing manager comes in or the CEO comes in and says, why is my website so slow? And I don't know. Oh, let's look into it. Puff, all the flow gone, right? Of my whole team, basically. And he does that all the time, right? It's not that our website is seriously slow, but it's his perception. So we do it through the week on short notice, pretty much like regular managers do, right? And we do the random topics. Doesn't even matter, right? Any topic can break out flow. Like it doesn't really matter to the rest of the company that you're actually in flow and you're actually producing stuff. No, we'll just break in and asking a stupid question about the ERP system, why it doesn't handle this single order, right? And we break the flow of 10 people because a single order couldn't be processed. That's how we work, right? That's why we roll all the time. They at least need 1 hour for all the meetings you can organize with the whole team, preferably on Teams, because then you can spend the first 10 minutes doing, can everybody hear me? You've been there, right? I know that. I love Teams. No, we don't. And we call these flow meetings, right? That's the point. So one last thing about this topic, right? Self-organization. Kim talked about this before. And self-organization is pretty damn tough, basically. So it's a good thing to put it in because you can make people doubt for the rest of their life, basically. This is really groundbreaking stuff because it's out of their comfort zone. And if you have to explain to people how to be autonomous, this is what you can do, right? Yeah, you know what? This is what origamis look like, and then this needs to be the outcome. How do you do that? I really don't know, right? I've been trying to work on this with teams for about a decade or two, and it's just so hard. There's things you really need to prevent, basically. Stuff like pair programming or mob programming, don't go in there because it might be more efficient, or do micro teams and stuff. Just don't do that, right?
Indeed.
Indeed.
So, but to make even more money, we also want to go into the enterprise.
Of course.
Because they pay a lot, basically. So the question we have when you take some methodology to the enterprise is there a way to kind of leave out the dependencies and to make every team, to allow every team to get on its own speed and to do its own roadmap, or do you need a large alignment process? So that's really the question that we're trying to answer. So one option is just copy Spotify. They worked it out, right? Yep. Everybody does that, so that's okay. What you also see many implementations do is you copy Spotify and then you keep all the layers of management that were already there. So why make yourself obsolete? And then if you think about that a little bit, so Spotify founded this model at a time where they were growing they were doubling, around doubling every year. So if that's your growth...
In the number of people, right?
In the number of people, yeah. And in the number of revenue. So if you're doubling every year, you need a lot of time to spend on onboarding and making sure that everybody understands culture, everyone understands product, understands your way of working, your values, your styles, your architecture, everything. That's a lot of work. Onboarding one person in your team is already quite some work. I know you all experienced that. So at Spotify, they thought, well, we need a ratio of 1 to 2 for managers and engineers. So every manager had 2 engineers. And this is the model that large banks or insurance companies are copying. So the question is, do you really want this ratio in your company? And is it really applicable in your context? And then the next question is, do you want to keep all the layers of management that you had? Well, I think the answer is no. But of course, we do want to keep that because it will make our projects really, really slow. Because it's a lot of oversight and little people doing the actual coding, which is the product development. So we will introduce Big Flow Framework. In short, we will call it BFF. We already got a lot of traction on Twitter about that. And we will start with version 3.0, just like Management 3.0 or Sociocracy 3.0. We will add complexity every year, of course, because we need new certifications. And we will copy Spotify like everybody and Basecamp like startups so that we also can have discussions about leaving the cloud. Because that's what you do these days.
Especially if you're Basecamp.
And of course, we also just compared it. So research basically says, well, we compared all the scaling frameworks, and basically they said they're all evenly bad. One of them, the gray one, is nothing. It performs as well as the rest. So you can just skip the safe implementation and just go for it.
This is my favorite agile scaling framework by far now. It's called None. We should rename the whole thing to None, right? That would be just like cool. Or to Null, so we can break databases and stuff, right? So that's cool. So anyway, with that, we need a little note on tooling, because yes, you do need tooling, right? And now you're probably all thinking, yes, now we're going to talk about JetBrains tooling or other IDEs or whatever tooling you use. No, this is about boards, right? Because in a flow project, in any agile project, right, you need boards. You need just tons of boards, basically. You need so many boards that the client really has no idea where you guys are. This is from a project in France that I needed to visit, and they tried to explain to me where they were. I had no idea, even after the explanation, right? I couldn't see through the boards. It's just totally obfuscated where they were. They probably were in a bad shape, but nobody knew because they couldn't read all these boards. So in Flow, we imagined that you need to have at least 20 columns to get from left to right, because otherwise, well, what else would you spend your time on, right? So including ready for celebration or whatever it was called, terrible thing. Yes, if you do enterprise Flow, you need to have a special room for it to put all the boards in. It's called the boardroom. And one of them that's really mandatory is called the burn chart. And you might think, what, doesn't he mean burn down chart? No, I don't mean burn down chart, because it's a burn chart, and I'll illustrate one. This is a real one, because basically most of these projects don't have any progress. Still, they burn a lot of money. So that's why it's called a burn chart. And I'll explain to you this one. This is from a project that Kim and I both were in. So the green line actually represents the number of story points we finished, which is a terrible phrase anyway, but you cannot finish a story point. It doesn't mean anything. So we did actually a lot of work. We did good work. However, the business managed to keep up with us, and they came up with new ideas and new requirements all the time. Hence, the line, the dotted line, actually is the number of points that we still needed to do. So this project doesn't go anywhere. We just burn money, we write code, we do work, but it never ends. That's the ideal project, right? I was in this project for 3.5 years, by the way. No, it's not true, right? It's 2 years.
2 years.
So, and then, of course, you need Jira, because where would we be without Jira, right? You like Jira, right? Do you actually know how to work Jira? Because if so, then I'll take a course with you. Well, yeah, you probably do, right? It's mandatory. Oh, good. So yes, Jira is mandatory in Flow. We need to have it, because basically, if you do Jira, that means you're agile, right? Because every manager thinks, oh, we use Jira, so we must be agile. No idea what that means. In Jira, you can have both a Scrum board and a Kanban board. I have no idea why, because to me, they look exactly the same. But I'm not an expert, right? And by the way, all the estimates and worked hours go into Jira as well, and so do all your requirements. Do you do your requirements in Jira? Yes, you do, right? Because there is nothing else anymore. Yeah, Confluence, but that's Jira without the steroids, I suppose. But so everything in there, we do that too, right? This is a requirement that we recently built, building the FAQ. I built it myself, actually. Building the FAQ page on our platform. Good stuff. It's a ticket. All the requirements are in Jira, which I'm not an expert to, so I have no idea where to find the requirements. It takes me tons of time to figure it out. So that, again, is a good point, right? So last thing about this is about communication, right? Communication, as we know, is hard. We figured out that researchers need to stay, not in flow, actually. So we built these open floor plans for them, right? You're all in an open floor plan? Like no walls, just people talking everywhere, making lots of noise, and et cetera, et cetera. It actually doesn't work if you want to be productive, because it's ruining your productivity, because it disturbs people getting in the flow. So this is good. Actually, in my current company, the finance department, who we sit next to, they actually had a wall put up between tech and finance 2 weeks ago, because one of the developers on my team, true story, is laughing too loud. That's not a joke, by the way, but it's a true story. So we figured out, you know what we'll do? We'll just make noise-canceling headphones required, because that way nobody can communicate with anybody else, except when, we make it even worse, but we tried this, didn't work, people couldn't see their IDE anymore, so we went back to just doing Slack. So Slack means basically, if you need to stay in flow, that means people shouldn't talk to each other than through Slack. You just send somebody a Slack message and they'll reply in a Slack message. I actually took a picture of 2 guys on my team who are sitting back to back, literally sending Slack messages to each other. That happened last week, actually. I didn't tell you that story yet, but true story. And occasionally, people can do pair slacking, right? That's when you sit together and Slack with somebody else and stuff like that. And we have, for every release, we have a Slack channel, of course, and it goes on forever and ever. So Slack, yes, mandatory stuff.
Definitely.
Yep.
And the last crucial ingredient is a manifesto, because that makes our methodology look really important. Manifestos are a published and verbal declaration of the intentions, motives, and views of the issuer. So you thoroughly explain why you think that a certain way of working, a certain vision on the world is the correct one. That's how it's meant. So the Agile Manifesto doesn't only have these 4 lines, it also has some principles, 12 principles, where they explain how you should be Agile. Yeah. They're not as well known as these 4. But after that, of course, it became worse, because this is the Software Craftsman Manifesto. It doesn't have any additional content. The Agile HR Manifesto. Who's using this? And then the response, of course, is this one, the Programming Motherfucker Manifesto. Where,
it's my favorite. So.
Yeah, it is.
I have to read this one. We are tired of XP, Scrum, Kanban, Waterfall, Software Craftsmanship, aka XP Lite, and anything else that gets in the way of programming, motherfucker, right? But this is my world, sorry.
This is your world, no worries. So, of course, we want a manifest. So, are you ready? Extensive certification over hands-on experience.
Yep.
Copying methodologies over thinking for yourself. We want tool-driven confusion over building working software. Endless meetings over focused flow, and we want mandatory gamification over authentic autonomy. And that is while we ignore the things on the right, we do the things on the left, because everybody ignores the right anyway. So just to be clear.
Quite good, right?
Yeah, and of course, in the current trend, we're going to call it a micro-fest, because it's also really short.
Everything's micro these days, right? So then there's one thing missing, is one other element that you can make tons of money with, we can actually, is of course certification, right? Who doesn't love certification? I did this. No, you have way more than I do. That's terrible. Because the thing with this is, like, if you start doing this stuff, let's talk about Scrum a little bit more, right? So let's talk about Scrum. So Scrum is the established belief or doctrine. This is a Greek word officially, right? So held by a religion, Scrum, or a particular group or organization, Scrum.org. It's authoritative and not to be disputed, doubted, or diverged from by the practices of believers. And if you do that, it sort of like gets like dogmatic, right? You learn how to do this, but you have no real experience. I'll give you a nice example of that that I recently encountered. It's like, so because we wanted at some point in time for everybody to come into tech, right? That's 20 years ago, but now we start pushing people out again, but it was different, by the way. So imagine you can do certification, right? You become a master at something, like a master at karate, right? This is the Karate Kid, you all know that. How long does it take to become a karate master?
many years and hours.
Many years. How many? So Kim is one actually. So how many hours per week did you practice?
Like 20 to 25 per week.
Per week, right? Okay, cool. So, and then it still takes years to become a master, right? Well, not in Scrum. In Scrum, you do this 2-day course. Is it still 2 days, or is it that they moved it to 1 day or 3 days? Or 1 week?
Ooh.
Yes. That means more money. We should do that too. 1 week courses, right? That's much better. So yes, you can do that, right? So you can make more money. So we do certification as well. Why? Well, we want to make sure that we have real professionals in our teams. So we need to do like flow certification, right? By the way, we need to make some money too. A week-long course is actually quite good. So in Scrum, I thought there were still 2-day courses. They're not. And then you do a multiple choice exam, and then of course you can go off and save the world, basically, right? Because you are a Scrum Master. Whether you have any experience whatsoever in doing this stuff, doesn't matter, right? Or you can get all sorts of weird certifications, like this person, I anonymized him, I think. So he says, well, I just got my OBEA Fundamentals certification at the OBEA Association. I have no idea what this stuff is like. Or a friend of ours, this is quite cool. They just got this certificate. Like, this is really cool, right? So
it's just me.
Well, sorry, it's Kim. So Kim.
So I basically, I know nothing about Akamai. I don't know who uses Akamai. It's not really that I know nothing. But we needed certifications, and they were a bit hard. And I can really study well.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll read the book, and I'll do the exam. And I passed 5 of them.
So now you are an HDNS and GTM Basic app-enabled certification for partner support engineer, right?
Yeah.
That's you, right?
But you don't want me in support. Trust me.
Because you've never done this in real life, right?
No.
So that's the thing with most of these certifications, right? Anybody, well, if you can learn hard enough like him, right, you can do most of this stuff, right? You can all become a Scrum Master for, well, I suppose most of you, well, especially you, of course. So, so that's the point, right? Everybody can come in and save the world without having any experience in saving the world. So that's the point. And we did that, right, in this industry. So in our case, yes, you can become a certified flow resource too. And you're, of course, wondering, how do I do it? How can I register? Well, basically, we're going to do it in courses that we'll teach. And then we'll teach you how to rip off Post-it notes, really important skill. Move items on a Jira board, hard enough as it is. And also to decorate your own workplace, because, yeah, well, we need to do that. And then we're like, what, 2-day courses? We'll just do a 1 hour or 50-minute keynote, and we'll see how far you can get, right? So there we are, right? We are now going to take the Certified Flow Resource exam for you, right? So yeah, who does the first question? You do,
Me,
right?
Yeah, my little thing is there. So what roles do we have in Flow? Pay attention. Managers, project managers, and product owners. Or do we have, we are all one team? Lots and lots, except for the testers, of course. Or resources.
Oh, yeah, okay. So please remember your answer. We'll get back to you after the question. So, why do we have retrospectives in Flow? A, to interrupt the daily flow of our resources. Good point. B, to endlessly discuss why the resources in our project should work harder, because they always do. To make sure that we spend 2 days preparing demos, who doesn't? And D, to watch our demos fail together with our clients. We've all been there, right?
Last question.
Yep.
We have certification in Flow because we want well-trained resources in our projects. Is it because it makes our methodology look important? Flow is so complicated, you just need lots and lots of training, or we want to make money.
What would it be? So remember all your choices. We're now going to tell you what the real answers are, and to see if you can all pass the exam. And the answers are, you all passed. Well, that's the point, right? So here's your certificate, specifically made for this day on Voxxed Days Thessaloniki. So you can copy it and just put it on the wall in your room, or put it on LinkedIn, right? That's the best idea to do that. By the way, you all owe us 200 euros per year for continuation fee. Right. Right?
Yeah, right.
Right. Okay. Short retrospective, right?
Yeah.
Are you first or am I first? I'm first, right? So
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. Software is not built by tools. It's not built by applying a process. Processes do not build software. It's the people who build software. So you need to pay attention to the people on your teams. They are your asset, actually. Actually, on our bookkeeping, the tech team is actually an asset on the bookkeeping. Cool, right? So yes, people are important in tech.
Definitely.
Yep.
And we believe that every organization will create and evolve the approach that fits them best.
Specifically evolve, right?
You have your own context, you have your own challenges, you have your own product, and you need to think for yourself, how are you best delivering this product? So it's good to find inspiration from the innovators and even the imitators, but don't act like an idiot to blindly copy what somebody else made work, because it won't work in your context. You need to think about it yourself. Spotify, in fact, never implemented the Spotify model, not one day. They never found it to work.
Yeah, just like waterfall probably, right?
Yeah.
So what is else we believe in? So we believe that personal communication, people-to-people communication is still key in software development, right? That means you need to go out and talk to other people, communicate to other people. Whether remote or not, this is still the case. I saw a tweet earlier on LinkedIn. There was somebody saying, Agile is against remote. No, Agile is not against remote. It's remote working is there, right? It's going to stay there. And we need to find ways to get back into these communication loops. I'm actually, personally, I like working in the office. So I go to my office 3 days a week. Some of my team are there, some are not. They'll come in at one point of the day, so they have to be there like 2 days a week. The rest of the company like 3 days a week, which is good. So we like doing stuff together, right? We work together all the time. Yes, we do mob programming. Yes, we do pair programming. Not all of the time, because nobody likes it all of the time. And we do micro teams, because working with other people and communicating with other people, it's truly vital in our industry.
Definitely. And we also believe that trust and personal safety rule.
Yep.
So when you work in sprints and you keep telling people every 2 weeks that they screwed up their job by estimating wrong, it doesn't really help you to give every person a voice, because most of the people are not that sure of themselves that they will keep on saying and voicing the things. So if you really want to take advantage of all the knowledge and all the expertise that you have in your team, you have to make sure that there's safety. And don't personally take it away, which is what's done in Agile a lot. So why we object so hard against calling people resources is you forget it's about a person. Like, oh, we can put these 3 resources in that team. No, you can't. These people have to learn how to work with that product. They have to understand that context. They have to actually make the team work with the new dynamics. It's not resources. It's not something you can just plug in like a piece of memory. Think about people as people, because they are.
Good point. And also, creating software, which does actually requires focus and flow, a lot of focus actually, right? It's like Venkat also said this morning, I have that too, right? I have code running in the back of my head all the time, right? It's not going to go away. It's been there for 40 years, or not the same code, of course, but not even the same language. But so it does require focus and flow. These are 2 of the guys on my team. They have very different ways of focusing, right? So on the left side is Jeroen. I call him Jeroen GPT because he knows everything. He always has this Rubik's Cube in his hand. He's really smart. He's actually participating in the Dutch championships. That's his way of focusing. He does that all the time, but he actually delivers all the time too, right? So let people focus in the way that they want to focus. And that's different for everybody. I have a guy on my team who likes to work alone. He's excellent at what he does, but he loves working alone. And I'm just valuing everybody on my team in the way they are, right? Because that is getting me the best performance.
Yeah. And we live in an industry where it takes about 3 years for all your current knowledge to become deprecated. So
Only 3 years, right?
You need to continuously learn with your team. And many teams are in what we call survival mode. In survival mode, you're working from one deadline to the next to the next. And that means that what you're going to do is get the person who already knows how to do that, do it. There's no time for learning, because the most efficient way to do work is to do it in everybody's comfort zone. But it's also the highway to a dead end. Yeah. So the way to change that is to get your team out of this deadline to deadline to deadline march. You have to make sure that there's time for learning and that everybody has to find their own stretch every time. And if you want to have time for learning, that means that you actually estimate more time, or don't estimate. You have to work together with people who are uncomfortable to the level where it's still safe, but a maximum stretch. And if you can find that balance, you're doing a much better job than anybody around you.
Yeah, well, not necessarily around you, but anyway, so yeah, and what we figured out over working with teams for a very, very long time is that people who can sort of govern their own work do better work. It's that simple, basically. So that means you need to get all this micromanagement that a lot of managers still do, that a lot of organizations still allow, you need to get that out of the door. The first thing I did, as an example, when I got to my current client, is I said to the CEO, you're not allowed in our stand-ups anymore. He used to give everybody tasks, and I stopped doing that. And people on my team actually said to me, yeah, but what do you want us to do? Do you want us to work on the TypeScript new platform, or you want us to work on our EP system today? I'm like, it's up to you. It's your work. You know best. I have no idea what's more important. I'm just new in this company, right? And they're like, yeah, but we don't know what to do. And oh, well, go figure it out. Make your own decisions. And a number of the people on my team, it actually took quite some time before they got to this point. They now all do, actually. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just hopefully, thankfully enough that I could actually join them doing it. And that is really cool. So we are, as a team, all equal, and we all decide for ourselves what we're doing. And that is what actually motivates people a lot, in my experience.
Yeah. And also organizations need to be as flat and with as little hierarchy as possible. Because every piece of hierarchy means that there is a need for alignment and communication. And both really don't scale. So the only way to make your team and your product more successful is to not rely on more communication, but to not have to rely on communication at all. So that means that you're building your product different. You're removing dependencies, like stressed out this morning. And that means that you also have to get away with all the hierarchy that's in place, because every piece of hierarchy means power, means restriction of knowledge instead of context sharing. So the only way to get people to do the right thing is to first explain what is your intent. Leadership by intent means that you spend a lot of time explaining why. Where do you want to go? Why do you want to go there?
Yep,
people don't magically align to one point. You have to kind of give some direction.
But you don't tell them how to do things, right? Because that's their domain.
That's their job.
Yes, exactly, right. So a good thing for me is that experience, in my opinion, still counts more than certification. And you were like, yes, of course, as an old man, he should say that, right? It's true, though. So I spend probably half of my time writing my own code and half of the time writing code with other people. And as such, we exchange a lot of knowledge, right? I can actually pass on a lot of the experience that I have, whether that's good or bad, that's not me to judge, but to the rest of the team and spread out this knowledge. And there's a role for experience in teams, a big role actually, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, good for me.
And the last thing is, if this is kind of confusing, you can have a very clear compass. If Agile should really reduce complexity. So if you find yourself being overloaded by meetings, retrospectives, all kinds of refinements and estimates, and it's making your job more complex, you're doing it wrong. You need to evolve it to a way where it helps you instead of it burdens you.
Yeah, and just say no, right? You don't have to be in every meeting, right? With every meeting people organize, ask them, so why do you want me in this meeting? What's my role? What am I going to take out of it? Can I skip this one? Don't ask, just do it, right? So it's just my guideline, but that's basically it, right? Avoid being in meetings that you don't need to be in. And then it will reduce your complexity a bit. So the last thing is basically, the only thing that is left is, probably the most important thing to me is that, that's why I'm in this industry for such a long time, it's the best industry to be in, right? It's the most complex industry there is in the world. It's also the most fun industry. So whatever industry allows you to puzzle for the whole day and the whole night, well, the whole night in my case, but puzzle all the time and still get something great out of it. That's really cool, right? So don't ever forget to have fun. That's it for today. Thank you for indulging us until so late, and we're keeping you from drinking beer, I suppose. Well, at least me. And so I hope you enjoy tomorrow as well at the conference, and thank you for having us.
Thank you both. It's always a pleasure having you on stage. Each of your presentation only gets better and better. I'm sure we have questions after a presentation like this one. Where is everybody going? Like people.
Beer. I suppose beer, right?
You said beer, and I think everybody went for the beer. Any questions? Okay. So thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Everybody.
You'll be here tomorrow too.
Yes,
So
we will be here.
grab you.